Hi guys, this is Dr. Fleming. I'm going to walk you through the solution for this lab, so if you had any problems with it, you can see what your issues were and you can see how it should have been done. So in the lab assignment, what I've asked you to write is a tax calculator. It's very simple. So I give you a range of incomes, and for each range of incomes there's a tax rate. Now the rate, if you look at like the way we do taxes in the US, there's a graduated rate, so you pay a certain percentage on the first part, you pay a certain percentage on the second part. But in this case, if you're in a particular bracket, I'm just giving you a flat rate. It makes it a lot easier to calculate. I'm not trying to, figure out if you can actually calculate taxes. I'm just trying to give you a little program assignment that helps you learn how to use if and if-else statements. All right, so I've opened up PyCharm here, and I have the lab open here for reference. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project. And I'm going to call this project Tax Calculator. Tax Calculator 2. Because I did a demo for this earlier, just to make sure everything was right. So Tax Calculator 2, and I am going to create. All right, I'm going to click close. Well, let this thing finish creating the environment. And then I'm going to close this tip. So now I've got my project, but I need to actually make a file to put my code in. So I'm going to right click on the project folder right there, and I am going to select new and then Python file. All right, it's a new Python file, and I'm going to call it tax calculator. There we go, Python file. All right, so if you look at what I've asked you to do, the first thing I'm asking you to do is to ask the user for their income using the input function. So the input function we covered in class. It's pretty easy to use. What we do is we type in input, and then we give the prompt, and in this case the prompt is going to be please enter your income, colon. And remember that the prompt does not put a space by default after your after the prompt, so a lot of times we like to have that, so I'm going to put the space there. And then the other thing is we need to actually save the user's input. So what we're going to do is we're going to save it in a variable called salary. So we're going to say salary equals input, and then we're going to ask the user to input their income. So when you're writing your code, it's really important to develop things incrementally. So what that means is you need to write a little bit of it and then test it, and then write a little bit of it and then test it to make sure everything works like you expect it to work. Otherwise, if you write a lot of code, it can be really complicated to figure out what your problem is, right? If you've got a problem in your input statement and you think it's a problem in your tests, it's hard to figure those things out. So make sure everything works, and then you can, it's much, much easier to do things. So here we are, we're going to run it. So it asks me for my income. Down here in the console, I'm going to type 40,000, and it exits. So I think that it did everything correctly. If I really wanted to test, what I could do is I could put a print statement in here and just print the salary out. So let's try that. Let's run it. There's another way to do it. You just hit the run button. It asks me for my income. I'm going to say 40,000 again, and it prints 40,000. So now that I know it's all working correctly and everything is saved correctly, I'm going to delete that because I don't want it to print that. So now what I need to do is compute the tax. So as I suggest in the assignment, we're going to use the if else construct. So if salary is less than 10,000, and there's no commas in here. Don't put commas, it's going to mess things up. Don't put commas, so we put a colon. So if the salary is less than 10,000, then we're going to make a variable called tax equals salary times 0.1, right? That's 10%, 0.1. All right, so we think that that works. So now we're going to indent one, and we're going to use the else if construct, and I like the autocomplete. So because we've already tested to see if the salary is less than 10,000. Remember, the else if clause is the else clause of the if. So that means the if clause must have been false. So the salary must be greater than 10,000. You can test. You can say if it's between 10,001 and 30,000, then that's we're going to calculate it at 20%, but you don't have to, because the fact that you're in that else clause means that it must have been greater than 10,000. So all we have to do in this case is test if we are less than 30,000, right? So if we're less than 30, oh, those silly quotes. If we're less than 30,000, the tax is going to be salary times 0.2, right? All right. So we're going to do the next clause. Less than, the next bracket is 50,000. Again, if you're in this clause, the first two must have been false. This one is going to be true, right? 50,000. And so we're going to calculate it that you're between 30,000 and 50,000. All right. So we're going to say tax equals salary times 0.3. And then we're going to do the next one. And we're going to say salary less than 100,000. And we're going to say tax equals salary times 0.4, right? So the very last one is the else clause. So the final else clause, everything else in there has been false, right? If you're here, then the salary must be greater than 100,000. So we don't actually have to test in the else clause, because if it had been less than 100,000, it would have been true in one of the previous clauses, and we would not be where we are right now. So if we're in the else clause, everything else must have been false. This is what's left over. This is everything that's greater than 100,000. So we can just use the we can just use the 50% number. And all right, so now we're done with our if else clause, and we think that this is correct. So we're going to go ahead and do the printing out. The printing is pretty simple. We're going to just remember we can just put a bunch of values in here and separate them with commas, and Python will print it out for us with a space in between. So I'm going to use the message that I did. Your income is $, comma, salary, comma, and your taxes are $. Oops, that's a percent, right? We want $1. Tax. All right, so let's run this and see what we get. So we have our program, we think it's done. Let's run this and see what we get. So enter our income. Let's say our income is $5,000. Oops, gotta click on the little console here. $5,000, all right. Oh, we have a problem. What is our problem? Type of error greater than not supported between instances of steer and int. So this is a cryptic message, and this is a message, actually I intentionally left this message in here for you because this is a message that you might get if you made this mistake, and I'm guessing that some people did. And what this str means is string, and this int stands for integer. So what this error is saying, even though it's a little bit cryptic, is that you're trying to compare a string with an integer, which of course you can't do. Is a string greater than an integer? I don't know. We can't compare those types. What's the problem? Let's go. Let's look up at our code. All right, if you remember, the result that you get back from input is a string. And what we're inputting here is actually a floating point number. Even though we use integers sort of in the table, it's actually a floating point number. So what we want here is a floating point number. So what we need to do is we need to convert from the string to a floating point number. And remember, the way that we do that is we use this float function, which will cast this or convert this string salary into a number salary. So again, this is a string. We want to go from a string to a number. So we have to do this conversion. All right. So now when we run things, we get another bug. So if you look here, it tells you where the bug is. The bug is on line 8. It says tax equals salary times 0.2, unexpected indent. And the reason is actually that I've typed here accidentally. Sorry, I typed here instead of the console. So we're going to type in $5,000 again. And we get $500, which is exactly what we expect. But, okay, when you are writing code, you should always test what are called edge cases. Edge cases are the cases right at the edge of a change in behavior. So if you're looking at our thing here, what we're looking for is conversion cases where the behavior of the code would change. So for example, these breaks between the salaries are a good example of that. So we've got the $10,000, we've got $30,000 a break. So what we're really interested in is looking at some of the breaks between some of these different values. We want to check those because those are where a lot of the mistakes are. A lot of times people have what are called one-off mistakes. One-off mistake is where I'm off by 1, just a little error. Usually it's because of, well, we'll see, less than or equal to's instead of, or less than's instead of less than or equal to's, or vice versa. But they're called one-off mistakes, so we need to check. So let's take a look at ours, and let's enter $30,000. $30,000, it says our tax should be 9%. 9% is the 30% bracket, right? But we're at 30%, we're at 30,000, not 30,001. We should have been at the 20% bracket. So what's the problem? The problem again is a one-off bug. So the range for the salary should have been less than or equal to, less than or equal to So the range goes up to 100,000 inclusive, right? So the problem with our code was that we did not have the equal to, we had just the strictly less than. Because we had the strictly less than, we were not catching that edge case. And again, that's why you test the edge cases. It's because it's really easy for you to make a mistake and miss an edge case. It's very, very subtle error, very, very simple to make. Let's look at our edge cases now. So we put in $30,000. $30,000 is now $6,000, which is 20%, which is what it's supposed to be. So the last little thing, and this is kind of just a minor gripe here, and again, this is something you might not have even thought about, is the fact that if you look at my sample output, the dollar signs don't have a space between the number and the dollar sign, but in our case we do have a space, and so we can actually fix that by setting this to be the null character. Now we run this and we type in 30,000. Oops, I'm typing in the code again. We type in 30,000, or let's say 3,000, 30,000. Now you see the dollar signs are correct, but we introduced another bug because now the and is right up against the 0. So we want to separate that out by putting an extra space in there in front of the and now we run it and we type 30,000 and it prints correctly. And then the final bit is this these zeros, which you can fix using the format if you're really interested in fixing it. I'm not going to fix it for you because it's pretty simple to do. I'll leave that as an exercise to you. Anyway, I hope that this makes things clearer to you. How you use the if-else constructs, how you get input, how you print output. Hopefully everything is very, very clear now. If you have any questions, come see me and I will try to clarify things for you.